It's that time of year again, Halloween season. On Blood and Black Rum podcast, we take this very seriously. So we're going back to the basics with what we're calling Halloweenies 2. Movies that take place on or around Halloween. Your favorites like Hocus Pocus, Ernest Scared Stupid, Terrifier, and more. Tune in all September and October as we smash jack-o'-lanterns and Oktoberfest in equal fashion.
Hey guys, welcome back to Blood and Black Rum podcast. I'm Ryan from ColdSploitation.com, and I'm joined with my co-host Martin.
How's it going?
It's kind of torturous today. Talking about getting back into the torture porn genre on our episode of Halloweenies 2.
I thought we were finally doing Mean Girls because today's October 3rd. It's Mean Girls Day.
It would have made sense, except, well, I guess it wouldn't have made sense because to everyone listening, they would have gotten it on October 5th, so...
It would have made sense because there is Halloween in it.
That's true. There is. It's not a big part of it. You could also argue it's got Christmas in it, too. Valentine's Day.
I'm a cool mom.
But no, we're going back to the torture porn genre. And we've done a number of them. And I thought the torture porn genre mostly ended in the 2000s, but it's still around and kicking, and occasionally you do get a nice torture porn movie out every now and then. I would consider Terrifier a torture porn movie. What about you?
No, it is.
Yeah,
I think we talked about that.
No, I think we
definitely torture porn.
I think we did say that. It's got an element of torture porn, probably more than slasher. That's for sure.
No, it's definitely more torture porn than slasher because it's just, people getting whacked.
Gore. Grew.
No plot to be found other than Cowboy likes to cut muffs in half.
But this one, so surprisingly, like every time I tell people who aren't really into horror movies, I say, yeah, this is the 10th installment. They're like, what? There are fucking 10 of those? Come on now. Takes people aback because I don't think people realize, especially because this movie series at a certain point started getting finicky with their movie titles and offshooting a little bit, kind of like Nightmare on Elm Street series where they're, Wes Craven had throw things up a little bit.
I won't have you making the comparison because we don't have a nice metal score. We don't. There's no Doc in here.
True.
Can't have any Linkin Park because Chester had to going off himself.
Yeah, I mean, it is surprising that we've made it 10 installments. And honestly, as we've talked about the entire movie series in the previous Halloween special that we've done, might as well just...
Our first actual Halloween special.
Oh, yeah, the first one, yeah.
Well, I mean, we did a little special tribute to, our first year to Halloween, but our first, big block, this is what we're going to be doing from now on. We went down the Saw lane because I never saw a Saw film.
Never saw a Saw. Yeah. Saw has made it 10 installments. And that's, considering the big names in horror history, 10 installments, that's nothing to shake a limb at. It's definitely a success story. And like I said, there have been hits and misses, and we've talked about those throughout our retrospective on the Saw series. And then later on, as they came out, we covered Jigsaw. Not my favorite, if I recall, and I think I've only seen it that one time. I don't think I've even revisited it. But if I recall correctly, neither of us were very impressed with that one, which would have been Saw 8. And then, wasn't last year, I think, but it was the year before, right?
Yeah, 2 years.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
It does feel like it was not that long.
Could have been last year. 2 years ago, we did Spiral, which again was fuck you and your Saw sequel naming convention. Gonna name this Spiral instead. And it made you think, oh, an American Uzumaki remake, right? No. It's Chris Rock starring in an American Uzumaki remake.
Also, too, it had the stupid name Spiral from the Book of Saw.
Yeah.
Like, so the fact that, like, that's the last film, and, you know, they went like, oh, this is going to be like an anthology series now. Well, not anthology, but, like, you know, episodic.
Mm-hmm. Almost like a procedural drama from CBS.
Dead on arrival. It's
coming fall 2024.
It's like the Dark Universe from Universal. They got the Mummy out, and it was DOA.
Well, you know, you kind of like, because the Saw series already did like from the Book of Saw, basically. You know, the sequels are at times about people who have taken on the religion of John Kramer and are doing his bidding. And so you can't really have another offshoot like from the Book of Saw, because they're all from the book. You know, it's all related. It's all tied in. So it's really hard to do an offshoot like that where you're going to, you know, have some sort of spin-off of the main role. So I consider Spiral Saw 9. I don't know about you. Even though it technically is, I guess, is not supposed to be.
No, it is, because, I mean...
It's Saw 9. Because, again, we haven't had another, you know, last Halloween, we didn't get another from the Book of Saw.
But it's fine, because, again, Halloween 3, you're going to get something new.
Mm-hmm.
Something fresh.
Mm-hmm.
Well, fuck that. We're going back to Michael Myers.
That's right.
But we still made the next one, Halloween 4. Curse of...
Yeah, I would be interested in seeing if they do intend to continue the sort of spiral element as well in a different direction. But as it stands, I don't think that that's the case. I think, and you know, I mean, obviously, talking about Saw 10 right now, even the producers consider Spiral a Saw 9. You know, so that was an interesting idea. That was an interesting, like, let's try to bring the movie series back, but they obviously found that it didn't work as well. I mean, I thought Spiral was okay. It was an okay movie. It wasn't great. It was okay. Again, I haven't revisited it since 2 years ago, even though I do own it. But it was okay, but it wasn't anything spectacular. And I think, you know, on our episode, we kind of talked about that as well. There were some interesting ideas, but a lot of times it fell flat. And it just didn't really do anything that was more intriguing than what the Saw series had done before. So here we are with Saw 10. And we are... And the other thing about the Saw movies is they couldn't make them any more convoluted with the timelines. There's literally... I feel like if you looked at John Kramer's calendar, it's booked up. Every day, every month, every year, there's something fucking on it. Next week, fly to Mexico. Week after that, I think I've got some traps set up in a warehouse down here. Got to get those prepared. He's literally the busiest goddamn guy with brain cancer that you can ever think about.
He's got that Protestant work ethic. He's just acting. We're just like, I don't care that I'm dying of cancer. No shit.
I can't even imagine. Man's dying of brain cancer. Brain cancer that generally tends to be debilitating in one way or another. You know, you can't, sometimes you can't walk, sometimes you lose your eyesight, you lose your hearing. This man's out there fucking building industrial-sized traps.
Do you think in hindsight, like, maybe, like, the brain cancer, like, is what caused him to become Jigsaw? It's not actually him being like, oh, these assholes, and they're being assholes. It's the cancer that's like,
You know, I thought that that Saw 10 actually... We'll talk about this, then we'll take a break and we'll get into the movie itself. But I thought that Saw 10 did an interesting thing in that it actually showed John Kramer after, you know, he's gotten all of his MRI scans. He's like, that was a doozy. You know, he's in the hospital and stuff like that. And then he sees a guy stealing from a patient. He's stealing like a watch and is going through his wallet and stuff like that. And then you see the game play out that he's doing for this guy. And then you find out, you zoom out, and oh, that was just in John's head. He's thinking like, this is what I'd really like to do, this motherfucker.
Suck his goddamn eyes out.
I thought that was interesting because I feel like an end game for Saw is to come to the conclusion that no, John Kramer didn't really do all of these things. He had fucking brain cancer. He's on his deathbed, and he is having hallucinations because of his brain tumor that he's doing all of these traps and games like in a grotesque, heroic way.
It's an adult version of I Am the Cheese. He's just...
Yeah, exactly.
It's just all in his head.
I mean, it would be a good out for the film series itself. Like, if you really wanted to wrap it up in a neat little bow, you could just come to the, say, no, none of this actually happened. There's not some sicko out there like Jigsaw. Rest assured.
Or Shutter Island, Leo.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I thought that, like, presented an interesting element to it, that you could also have the film display all of the gory grotesqueness that you want to, and then come back to the idea that, like, it actually didn't happen. It was just a fantasy of somebody's playing that stuff out in their mind, because who would ever actually do that kind of shit? You just thinking it like, this guy's an asshole, what I'd like to do to him, I thought that was an interesting idea. It doesn't really get explored after that, and it seems like in that scenario, the filmmakers really wanted to have their way, but also not really have it actually happen. So they wanted you to see all the goriness of it, but not actually, I don't know, not have that honest conscience or whatever. I don't know. But I thought it was an interesting idea nonetheless. But before we get too far into Saw 10, let's take a break, talk about the beer that we have on the show today. And it's actually not beer. 'Tis a cider.
A hard cider.
We don't do ciders that often, but you know what? We've done a lot of Oktoberfests this Halloween season. A lot. And so it's time to take a break from Oktoberfests and explore another seasonal favorite, the cider. And I don't know about anybody else, but I like to take a hard cider and I like to warm it up like a hot toddy. Make a nice hot hard cider. No, I'm just kidding. That sounds grotesque, especially with the one that we have on the show today. Because we have 1911s, or otherwise known as Beacon Skiff. It's like Beacon Skiff presents 1911s, something like that. It's like a fucking John Carpenter movie.
Well, they never used to have on there the Beacon Skiff part.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't fully understand the company itself. I know Beacon Skiff owns it, and then they probably have an offshoot for the cider called 1911. That's my thought. But this is, yeah, is right. That's what he does. What you think too?
Yeah, I mean, Beacon Skiff Orchards in Lafayette, New York, own it.
And then they have this is their brewery brand, the cider brand.
Yeah, the 1911, which we have done their ciders before.
Yep.
Lafayette's only like 2 hours away from here.
When they're not getting their hands into the cannabis industry. Apparently.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. That's pretty cool of them. But they've kind of become at least locally, they've kind of exploded.
Yeah, the cider drinking. Yeah, I mean, besides, we have another local one from Albany, 9-Pin. That's a pretty big one around here too. But yeah, 1911. Big.
I would say they definitely got probably the biggest. I mean, they've beaten woodchucks like ass. Can't find a woodchuck from Vermont anymore around these parts for the most part.
Woodchuck is kind of laid low a little bit.
But they do make good hard cider, and I do like hard cider. My problem with hard cider though is even though I do like it a lot, I have to be in the mood for it.
Agreed.
And man, it's the first week of fall, and what says fall? Like a nice hard cider. But this one's super duper fall-y.
Yeah, this is a Halloweeny. This is not just fall-y. This is more Halloween than Trick or Treat that we covered last week.
Yeah.
You look at the can, it's fucking Halloween as hell. Probably the only can that actually beats this one is the Amagang Trick or Treat one that we had last year.
No, I think this is better.
Oh, you think this can is better?
It's got the black. It's got the black and orange.
Classic.
I'm gonna be saving this can. This is a great can.
I'm probably gonna save it too. I have the Amagang one from last year. I'm gonna save this one too. Yeah, this one, it's got that nice deep orange set on a black can. And then, of course, you have the classic candy corn colors because this is a candy corn hard cider. And then you got candy corn sporadically, magically mixed around the can, too. I'll be honest with you, I was not expecting much from this. Not because I don't like 1911. I've had some that are good, some that are bad from 1911, and that's kind of just the cider thing that happens. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. It depends on your taste. For me, personally, I was not really that expecting that much from this one because I don't really like sweet ciders. If you look at the scale of sweetness on this can, because Beak and Skiff are kind enough to provide a scale for your cider, it's a 6 out of 6. And so for me, I was like, oh, fuck. I'm a dry cider fan. I'm not a sweet cider fan. So I was really concerned with the 6 out of 6 scale. First of all, it's got to be really sweet if you go on a scale of 6. Okay, like most scales are 5. You got a scale of 6, like you're off the charts. So
that one goes to 11.
Yeah. So that was concerning to me. But I do like candy corn. I know a lot of people are some people like candy corn, some people don't. It's kind of an acquired taste. What do you think? What do you think about candy corn?
Hate it.
Oh, so you're definitely in the dislike it camp. And why is that? Just because it's too sugary,
It's bland. All it tastes is sugar. It's like eating a circus peanut. I don't...
a vanilla-iness to it.
Kind of. I mean, I've kind of gotten, as I've grown older, my hate for it has become less, strident.
Right? You're not repulsed by it anymore.
You're just... Like, I could eat it, but I'm not, it's not something that I'll ever go out of my way for, because it's just a brick of sugar. And it's not even that good sugar. Like I said, it's like a circus peanut. Like, whoa, circus peanut. And then it's like, chewy sugar, yum.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I do like candy corn, but in very, very sporadic spurts. So, like, I'll have one or two, and then I'm like, all right, I'm good for a while. It's definitely one of those things that's like, you take a bite, and you're like, time to hit the dentist. Because... I'm afraid I've just endangered my teeth.
You can feel it,
yeah, you do.
And actually, speaking of drinking this, I can feel it on my teeth. It's like I don't drink soda that often now. It's like if I crack open a Pepsi, for the first time in 7 months, I drink one. I'm like, wow, I need to go brush and floss after this. I feel disgusting.
Yeah, I get that as well. I do feel that film that gets on your teeth from this, and when you drink it, oh boy, that first sip, you're like, whoa, that is a sweet guy, very sugary, and you immediately, it does definitely taste like candy corn. Tastes like somebody put candy corn in apple cider, and actually I would say that the candy corn flavor does overpower the apple cider by a good amount. If you were trying 1911 and you're like, I want to see what their cider's like, I would not recommend getting the candy corn one first, because you're not really gonna... The impact of the cider is kind of lessened here. This could be I feel like it could be like water, and they put that candy corn syrupy extract in it, the same effect would occur. You do get a little bit of apple cider at the end of it, a very, very minimal amount, but the overall, encompassing flavor is candy corn and sweetness and sugar, at least in my opinion.
No, I agree. It's definitely not bad. I'm actually surprised how much I do like it, because I do think it's good. It's definitely like a dessert cider where you can have your, one and move off and do something and kind of enjoy it throughout. Maybe if you're taking the kids trick-or-treating and you're one of those cool millennial parents that, drink while your kids are out trick-or-treating. It's definitely, candy corn is there. It's full force. It's full frontal. You drink this thing, it hits you right away. There's no subtlety to it at all. No nuance. It's just there. It kind of basically does taste like they took hard cider, like a batch of hard cider, and they just melted down a fuck ton of candy corn and threw it while they were letting the cider ferment.
Yep.
It's not bad. Like I said, I'm kind of surprised how much I do enjoy it, but it is definitely something I would say you're not going to be able to just pound away. And you're not going to be racing for multiples of this.
Yeah.
It's nice, but that's about it.
I'm wondering if you're going to get a sugar crash after drinking it too. Like, I'm actually...
It's 7% too. So this thing, if you do go through it nice and quick, you're going to be probably...
I know. I'm actually... we have 2, and I'm scared to start the second one, to be honest with you.
Well, I'm about to, because we got a show to do.
Yeah, I mean, I will say it's actually, besides the sugary sweetness of it, it's very drinkable. They did a good job with this. If you like candy corn, if you like that sweetness, or if you're a sweet cider person, I think this cider would be really good for you. With that said, you can't drink a whole lot of it, and I think that's expected. But I think that this was an interesting experiment because I felt like it could go very, very wrong. Frankenstein levels of whoopsie in the laboratory. Because I've had a few other adjuncty type ciders like that, and sometimes they taste like absolute vomit. Woodchuck's Pumpkin is one of those that I know there are people out there that do like this, and to you I say you must have some sort of vomit fetish, because the last time I had pumpkin woodchuck apple cider, it tasted like straight up like I just threw up a bunch of like vomity bile.
That was like that was a decade.
Yeah, it was
watching Bill's jet ski.
It was absolutely horrendous. Would not get again. So, and that's, again, I don't like pumpkin, but still, it was horrible. So I've had some really bad ciders, and weird experiments with cider, and sometimes they go really, really wrong. But this one, pleasantly surprised. So, check it out if you can find it. It's a local one for us.
With Steve Brule.
Do we know how far they distribute? Are they distributing out quite a ways, or New York State only?
I'm not sure. I imagine it's probably just in the Northeast.
Probably might get it in New England territories. I don't know. All right, let's talk about Saw 10, because I think we got a lot to talk about. So Saw 10, of course. You know what? I think it's interesting, because this film doesn't really do a good job of explaining at the beginning of it, hey, you're watching a prequel to some of the movies, to some of the Saws. So it kind of leaves the viewer open to having to do the research to look into Saw 10, where it says, yeah, this takes place between like 2 and 3.
Oh, which, by the way, real quick, Beacon Skiff is 1911. It's distributed quite a lot. It's Illinois, New Jersey, Minneapolis, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Vermont, Virginia, Florida, Maine, Alabama, Georgia, Minnesota, Michigan, Tennessee, Wisconsin, Kentucky, New Hampshire, D.C. Those are the list of all the states where they have distribution in.
Wow. It's a big area. Surprised by that. But anyways, yeah. So with Saw 10, though, it doesn't do a good job of explaining this is happening between some of the movies in the series. I think we knew about that. We knew that it was going to take place as a sort of prequel to some of the other films in the series. But how did you feel about that? Like, opening up, do you think that the film did a good job, or can you glean, maybe not having done the research behind the film, can you glean what's going on by just watching it?
Yes and no, because you have to have some backstory on, like, if you're somebody who's like, this is your first Saw film, you would think with the whole opening with, Kramer getting the MRI and finding out that, he's got brain cancer, and it's not Carrie Ellis that's telling him this information.
Mm-hmm.
But, the fact that that's going on, like, obviously, if you know about the Saw films, you're, okay, it's prequel. Not only that, because they kill him off in Saw 3. So anytime we've ever seen him ever since, and again, Tobin Bell needs paycheck, so they've shoehorned him into every film, so you can get money. Not saying that's a bad thing, but so it's going to be a prequel if you're familiar with the franchise, even at the base level. I think if you're new to the franchise, which I think this is what they're trying to do, it's like a little bit of a reboot, kind of like in how Jigsaw and Spiral was supposed to be a reboot, because it's basically like, let's get back to the basics of like Saw 1, 2, and 3, but let's also involve, make sure it's got, Tobin Bell, got, Jigsaw forefront, none of this bullshit, and we're going to put the kind of modern drama that people expect in their horror films.
Yeah, and I misspoke. It actually takes place between Saw and Saw 2, not Saw 3. Because I think you're right. Part of the reason why Tobin Bell is seeking out another MRI and stuff is because he killed his other doctor in Saw. So it's like, whoops, probably better find somebody else. So yeah, not
that guy was a piece of shit, and he didn't know what he was talking about. He was fucking somebody else's wife, but still,
Not that Cary Elwes was a great doctor, but anyway, he had to find a new one because he killed him. So it does make sense that this is a prequel in some capacity. But if you're coming in and you're like, well, I'm going to start at Saw 10, what difference could it make? It's going to make a little bit of difference. With that said, this film does not have the necessity of knowing all the fucking ins and outs and random turns that all of the other Saws have taken in the the later years and in the later installments, because it is a prequel, which is very nice.
Which, if you're not familiar with the franchise loves to shoehorn in twist at the very end.
Yeah.
In a very, like, Lupin the Third-esque way of, like, aha, see, if you followed this really closely, you would have been able to figure out that I did this, and as the dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun, dun-dun, dun-dun-dun, dun-dun, dun-dun-dun, music's playing,
Yeah. I mean, I will say, one very big strength of Saw 10 is that it does not require you to have watched, Saw 7, because they're going to throw in, one shot of like flashback and green tint to Saw 7. This film doesn't have that, and that was one of the things about Jigsaw, was like, at a certain point, Jigsaw was just like, what the fuck is going on? Like, with flashing, there's Saw 3, here's Saw 5, and people are just like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Who these people are anymore? It was, especially since there was such time frame gap between that movie's release and others. That's one of the reasons why I thought Jigsaw was kind of ho-hum, is because it really required you to have like an intimate, like Marvel-esque cinematic universe knowledge of what went on in the Saw franchise. So if you hadn't brushed up on your Saw lore, you were kind of lost. Saw 10 refreshingly doesn't have that. Nice. It also does not have the putrid green tint of the other Saw movies. You know what it has?
Millennial blue.
Mexican yellow tint.
Oh, I was going to say millennial blue. There's a lot of blue.
There is a lot of blue. You're right. Akin to like Saw 3. Saw 3 had a lot of blue, if you remember, because it was like had all the freezer scenes and stuff. No, but this one, because it takes place in Mexico for the most part, you'll notice walking outside, you get that nice like Sicario yellow, from like fucking
spaghetti western.
It's a tactic that's used to indicate like, hey, you're not in America anymore. You're in someplace else. You're in the sunny vistas of Mexico.
Saw 10's subtitle was Saw 10. John Kramer goes on to Club Med for a Jimmy Buffett concert.
While traveling abroad in Mexico for to see Jimmy Buffett one last time, John Kramer stumbles upon a
drug cartel.
That's a thing too, because the film, we're kind of jumping around here, but basically, the film starts out. John Kramer's, obviously finding out, wow, I got serious brain cancer. This isn't just like the run-of-the-mill stage 2 brain cancer. This shit is serious brain cancer. I've got to get it cut out. And it's especially considering, we're talking about Jigsaw here. His first basic instinct is to get it cut out, really, basically. Like, I'm gonna excise the whole cancer. So, he's attending cancer groups and things like that, which honestly sounds fucking horrible. When you watch, like, I understand the idea of visiting with other people who are in your same predicament, but honestly, it sounds really depressing because everybody's just like, yep, got stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Definitely going to die in like 3 weeks. And I don't know, it just presents you with like this inevitable mortality for everybody. I know everybody sounded really hopeful, but sounds very depressing. But anyway, he's attending these groups. Eventually he finds this guy who's like, yeah, I had my pancreas, just absolutely all the cancer cut out of my pancreas. Like, look at this gigantic scar I'm left with, but they cut it all out. Which begs the question, especially for someone who is as smart and knowledgeable about the human body as Jigsaw, can you really believe that he would actually believe that somebody was like able to just cut out like one of the most fatal cancers of the pancreas by just being like, done?
It's like top 3 killers, ain't it? Like, if
I mean, because
it's like right after brain cancer and stomach cancer, it's like, oh, you got pancreatic cancer. Man, you're fucked.
Because, well, like, part of the thing with pancreatic cancer is you can't really just go and cut out the pancreas, right? Like, generally, one of the reasons that it's so deadly is because you don't find it very fast, because you don't really notice that things are wrong with your pancreas until it's too late to actually do anything about it. So it's already stage 4 by the time you know that you have pancreatic cancer. But anyway, it's not like you can just go and just cut out your pancreas and be like, you'll be fine. No, you won't be fine. It's a major endocrinologic organ. You can't survive without, your pancreatic hormones. So it's not just, you can just go in and like cut out a tumor, especially one as big as like a stage 4 tumor, or especially if it's spread, metastasized. And that's the thing too. Stage 4 metastasized. You're telling me that this guy had stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and they just went in, sliced up the pancreas, and then he was good.
And it's already been spread to every, spreading to other organ.
I mean, I guess I understand the idea behind this, where you have gene therapy too that's supposed to target the cancer cells. So in that sense, maybe John would be, especially because he has this need to continue his work, and so he has this hope that anything will work. So I kind of understand that, but I also have a hard time believing that John would be that gullible to think like, wow, there's just like some random person who's able to come up with this miraculous cancer treatment that no one else has done before.
Especially because nobody has heard of it.
Right.
It does, you have to go to this like dark website to find it.
Yeah.
And again, it's literally 2003, so it's like not like the technology's there at all for like this, like, oh, come get my miracle belief. And the fact too that part of him becoming Jigsaw to begin with was like his acceptance of him dying.
Mm-hmm.
And
like, I need to do this work because
he knows that he's seen people waste their lives away and not do what he sees is the right thing and what they need to do to live be fruitful in their life, but be thankful and grateful for their life, because he's dying of this illness.
Right.
So for the fact that he's already started on this journey, for all of a sudden, wait, there's a way out, and I'm also going to start killing these people down in Mexico too, and it doesn't jive.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think that there's definitely some muddled storyline there. And the film really wants to sell you this idea of like John Kramer, the medical patient, because the film's probably, I want to say a good 30, 40 minutes of the movie is devoted to John basically just finding out about his cancer, finding about this medical procedure and exploring that, and kind of taking it as sort of like a medical drama. And, you do get that, the one scene added in where he's imagining a trap for this guy, which has like a massive industrial vacuum and sucking out eyes and stuff like that. Which
Now, I think we've also mentioned before, but let's just say, John Kramer and his games, some of them are so unfair. Oh, Amanda, you have to crawl through bugs to survive. You there?
Yeah.
You have to wait. Hold on. You have to cut your whole fucking leg off.
Yeah. No, I agree, and you kind of see that. You kind of see that in this movie too, where he does have some really, really brutal fucking games for some people, and then other people are like, yeah, just like smack your leg a little bit, break it. You know, it's like there's a difference between having to cut off your old goddamn leg and like breaking your ankle. I mean, maybe in the scheme of things, they are both brutal, and when you think about it, like, there are avenues that are awful about both of them, but like cut off your leg or break your ankle, which one would you choose? It's like someone got off a little bit easier. Maybe, I don't even think that this film shows you like there are like levels of the game too, like where like, oh, you did something worse, so you're gonna get a worse game. Like there isn't really, because the lady that gets the really terrible game where she gets her fucking leg and head cut off, she didn't really do anything like that awful. So like there's not, I don't know, like, yeah, you're right. Some of the games are just like, fucking John, why do you hate this person so much? Like,
She's a whore.
you're just supposed to, you're supposed to be teaching them a lesson. You're not supposed, not supposed to be taking out your vengeance on some people.
Especially because it's, I'm not killing them.
Mm-hmm. The whole moralistic element of it.
Yeah.
Which definitely comes into more play in Saw 10. Talk about that a little bit, though. It's kind of getting, I don't know, trying to keep things in a little order here.
But you're going back to what you're talking about, the medical drama stuff. The first 40 minutes, though, are the best part of this film. And
it's where you kind of get like a prestige horror out of Saw 10.
yeah. Well, and not only that, though, too, like, it's the best shot, it's the best written, everything flows, and it's really well and really good. And, it's like like I said, like, the way it's kind of a reboot, a soft reboot, too, is because, and placing it in this, nebulous, realm between Saw 1 and 2, is because it's like, okay, we can take all of the stuff from the franchise and we can kind of gussy it up for, newer people. Because if you think about it, the last real mainline Saw film was 2010 with, Saw 7, Saw 3D. Then, 7 years later, we get Jigsaw, and then 4 years later, we get, Spiral. So to kind of, with the big, horror boom now, of like everybody kind of going back and back and back, to try and true properties and trying to, squeeze more money out of them, they've all been, like, this is the same with, like, the Halloween franchise, too, trying to humanize and make it more dramatic. At least in the first iteration. And it works really well here, because I think there's a lot of things, a lot of nice ground that can be treaded by John Kramer's story and what he's going through, especially if this is the first time, like your first experience. And it works really well. The problem, though, with this film is that after we get to that point, we go into not just Saw territory or stereotypical horror slasher territory or torture porn territory. The film goes into that, and then the last 25 to 30 minutes of this film is right off the rails. It just is like, it's like Halloween 2, Evil Dies Tonight, just fucking boom. and there's no bringing that train back. Like, so it's like you started so good, and then it's just,
yeah. I mean, I think the other thing that I like about the first 40 minutes is that it feels the least formulaic of the movie, because once you get to we're in Mexico, we have a generic giant warehouse that could be Jigsaw's lair, but it's not, it's in Mexico. There's not really, like, you settle into this formula of just like, there's going to be a game, someone's going to die, and generally they're going to lose that game, because it's very clear that the filmmakers want you to see the carnage of both them doing the game, So we talked about the one lady who has to cut off her leg because she has to collect marrow from her leg, from her bone marrow when she cuts off her leg. And then they also want you to have to see them lose, where they have to suffer the massive fatality that they're going to incur because they lost. So in this case, she's just not able to collect enough marrow at the time, which seems a little bit unfair because she only gets like 3 minutes. She's got to cut through her entire fucking leg.
Yeah, her entire feet.
Entire leg in 3 minutes, then grab a vacuum and have the vacuum suck up through a long-ass hose to another area, like across the room, that's collecting the bone marrow on a scale, and the scale has to reach a certain amount for it to stop. And she gets to a certain point, and then she loses, and then her head's cut off as well. And so you see the whole grisly aftermath. You see her cut off her leg's laying on the floor, her head's laying on the floor, her headless body's laying on the floor. You get to see every gruesome detail of it. And while I do think that that's interesting because they did want to get the most out of that, would be considered like more of a simple trap in terms of like Saw sequels, they also do want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to have you see every fucking detail about this trap. And I think that becomes formulaic throughout the movie because that's kind of the way that every single trap works in this game, in this, the full game that they're playing, which is nicely segmented between Saw's first games where it's only 2 people, and then Saw 2, which has a group of people all playing a game. This one is like a smaller version of Saw 2 where it's only 4 people playing the game. It's kind of nice that they did that. I like how they were like trying to show how they amped up their games as they went along. But I think that the film falls into this formulaic approach of, here's a game, they're generally going to lose that game, so you're going to see everything. And then we're going to take 15 minutes to do like a heart-to-heart between Amanda and Jigsaw, where they talk about like, I can't do it. I can't continue your legacy. And he's like, yes, you can. You're going to have to. You're going to have to continue my legacy. And they do a heart-to-heart for about 15 minutes, and there's like, it's basically an interlude. It's like a torture porn interlude, or it's like a porn interlude, right? It's like where you want to see the action, but you're subjected to 15 minutes of getting small amount of storyline in there so they could justify that, like, no, it's not just a collection of faces of death clips, that are, torture porn, that we're just showing you people getting mutilated. We actually have a story in here somewhere. So I think that's where the film goes wrong. The first 40 minutes, not formulaic. You really don't know where the film's going. And I kind of like that because it is at a certain point in the Saw franchise, you know exactly what's going to happen. Even though the traps are different, the approach to setting up the games is different, approximately the whole scope of the movie laid out for you. In this film, with Jigsaw like discovering his cancer and going through this whole hospital thing and finding a person who can help him, you don't really know where the film's going for a while. And I like that. I wish the film hadn't relied on so much formulaicism. The other thing I don't like about setting it in a gigantic fucking warehouse that apparently Mexico has a lot of too, just like America, is that you don't get to see, like, for all intents and purposes, it doesn't matter this movie's set in Mexico, besides that you have Mexican cast. And you see a little bit of the Mexican landscape when he's actually driving to this facility. It doesn't matter that this is in Mexico. This could be anywhere, USA. Could be the place that the FBI can't fucking find for whatever reason in America. Did you feel the same way? Like at a certain point, the Mexican setting is completely moot.
No, it's basically kind of just there to spice it up a bit.
Yeah, it honestly feels like
Look, it's not Detroit anymore with these warehouses and plants. Now we're in Mexico City.
Right.
Yeah.
It felt like they were like, we need a new locale. It's almost like the in space sort of thing for horror franchises. They can't rightly bring Jigsaw to space. Kind of makes that would definitely jump the shark. So they were like, listen,
that would have been awesome.
I know. It's like they were weighing their options. They're like, saw 10, Mexico, space. I don't know. I guess we'll go with Mexico. Makes a little bit more sense. But I do feel like the Mexican setting is, one, just kind of wasted. It's kind of like the same thing with Scream being set in New York City. Besides the, Scream 6 being set in New York City. Besides the one scene where they go into the bodega, there's really no point in having it set in New York City if you're not going to use any of the actual locations. The same is true of this movie being set in Mexico. Like you do get one touristy sort of taxi ride, but other than that, there's really no point in having it set in Mexico. And then the other thing that I don't like about the Mexican setting, though, is that it allows the film to be to use the exploitativeness that it does later on in the movie. And I guess I should say spoilers, but I think at this point, if you listen to the show, you know that we do spoilers in here. So just tune out if you haven't seen the movie. But what I'm talking about by exploitativeness is that the end where they bring in, it's almost comically stupid, where they bring in the little kid that the film has made a gigantic, unnecessary focus on, because at one point when Jigsaw gets to Mexico and he sees this little kid, there's this one weird ass scene where he wakes up in the middle of the night and the kid's trying to fix his bicycle, and Jigsaw's just like Good Samaritan fixing the bicycle. Oh. And that scene feels so out of place. It's like, why are we seeing this weird scene of Jigsaw helping this kid with a bicycle? It doesn't have any bearing on what he's there for. Yes, he's being a good guy. I guess you're trying to see the moralism of bless you, good Christ. You're trying to see the moralism of Jigsaw, I guess. But at the same time, that scene sticks out like a sore thumb. It's just like a weird... This is comical now with all the scenes. It's just like a weird insert into the movie that you're like, why is this here? And then at the end of the movie, when they pull in the kid, you're like, oh, that's why it's here. That's why they wanted a kid to be Jigsaw's friend for a little while.
Or amigo, as they say that.
Because I found that moment was exploitative in sort of an edgy way. It was just like, look, we can include a kid in our games this time, because while Jigsaw's a probably, moralistically terrible person, look at how awful this woman is. She'll, basically put a gun to a kid's head and force them to play a game for really no purpose other than to be a terrible person. What did you think about that? Did you think it was a good inclusion in this movie, or what?
I mean, it's also ruined by the fucking trap that they're supposed to be in, which is this fucking seesaw water poured of blood, which is just kind of pointless. It's like, oh, don't pull, as Jigsaw's being drowned in blood, and they're like, oh yeah, look at him being drowned in blood. What an asshole.
I mean, I think what really turns me off of this is that it's so foreshadowed. It's so prepared. It's unrealistically foreshadowed by him teaching the kid the word for pull. And then you come to this fucking game where they don't, it's clear that they weren't expecting the little boy to be included in the game. And he's like, don't pull. It's just so I don't know. It didn't work for me. And I found it to be edgy for edgy's sake that they included the kid in it. Because they wanted to have a villain that was not Jigsaw. They wanted to have someone who was like, wow, they're worse than Jigsaw. Jigsaw makes people cut off their legs, but he doesn't do it himself. This lady, she steals money. She's a see you next Tuesday.
She's Andrea from fucking Walking Dead. Because all I could think of as every one of her friends are going, or co-workers are going through these jigsaw traps, and she's going to be the last one because she's the
head honcho.
The head honcho, which also again kind of shows that Jigsaw, like, I don't have anything to do with this, They're just being tested. The fact that he's like specially waiting for her to be tested shows that,
Mm-hmm.
But so I mean, it's just funny as they're like doing their thing. She said, "Come on, we gotta do this. Work harder. Cut your leg in half," and like coaching them up. And all I can think of is like the random season 2 or season 3 episode of Walking Dead where we got to meet beautiful Karen when she was like had the gall to question Andrea, and Andrea was like, "We gotta stick together, Karen." That's what this reminded. I was having flashbacks of. It was just like Andrea being like in Alexandria, being like, "Come on, let's go! Like, stop! Cut your leg in half, you bitch! I need that money."
I mean, I think it's funny because there's a fine line, I feel like, between fraudulent medical care, right, that Cecilia Peterson is clearly in the game of.
Well, John paid $203,000 to her. Where did Jigsaw find all this money?
He's rich because he's an architect. But I feel...
And civil engineer.
I feel like, there's definitely a difference between someone who's committing medical fraud, which she definitely is, and someone who would be so evil, where they're like taking glee in the fact that my associate that I don't have to pay anymore is fucking cutting off their leg and then got her head fucking ripped off. I think it borders on being absolutely ridiculous.
She's a cartoon villain.
Yeah, she really is. And even the writing for her is just so over the top sometimes. You almost, it's just kind of ridiculous how far they have her go. And I think I understand what they wanted to do. They wanted to humanize John Kramer in a way that you generally don't get to see it, because you got to see it in Saw a bit, because that was all about medical malpractice, insurance issues, things like that, which is arguably why that film is probably one of the best in the series. But I understand why they wanted to do that here. They wanted to show John Kramer in a light that, guy's got some issues, but he's not as bad as some other people. But I feel like trying to do that with Cecilia Pearson and making her so ridiculously villainous, over the top villainous, didn't work. It actually was a detriment, because I don't think that the film really made that connection. That it's almost like just a parody, because she's so over the top. She's such a cartoon villain, as you said, that it doesn't really register. It's and in those scenarios too, you have to wonder can they be reconciled? Can they actually be saved? Even if John plays a game with her, is she going to learn from that game? I don't know. I think that's probably the biggest misstep of this movie is like you said, that's where the film kind of runs away with itself and is fucking pedal to the metal speed, over 55 right off a cliff, because it doesn't really know what to do in those last moments, and it almost feels like it's flying by the seat of its pants, especially, and this happens a lot in Saw movies, but the film's conclusion, where they wrap it up and they're like, hey, guess what? All the stuff that you saw where it looks like John Kramer and Amanda are in trouble, they really weren't, because they planned it all like this. John planned to be bloodboarded, not with a little kid, but they didn't plan it exactly like that, but they definitely planned all of these events to occur.
Which I think the film gets mainly from Saw 2, because at least in Saw 1, it's really clever. She was lying there the whole time when the game was, passed out or whatever. Saw 2, they go overboard with the whole your kid was actually in a fucking safe the whole time, you idiot, And it kind of stems from there and just keeps snowballing. Like I said, it's the Luponification of it, because if as much as we love Lupin the Third, the series is very much known for at the end of episodes and throughout, like, oh, how did you survive this and this? It's like, you didn't notice I did this, this, and this? You fucking idiot. You know? And
Yeah.
that's where this, you know, this franchise does that too, where it's got the music play like dun 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 dun.
And the thing about that too is I think you're actually, like, at least for me, I was actually expecting them to be prepared for this. Like, I was expecting, like, oh yeah, they've actually planned this, which is, I mean, maybe stupid for me, but I was really, and I kind of was getting the feeling from, like, Amanda, especially Shawnee Smith as Amanda, where she was, like, acting so,
What's going on?
yeah, surprised about, like, John, are you sure? Are you sure? It was like, okay, they know. They've got all this planned. I think it's ridiculous, though, when they show you the flashbacks and they're like, we know about Parker. We know that he's in on it, and we actually needed to find him.
And I sat there and I unloaded his gun bullets
Yeah.
with my cancer-ridden, like,
Yeah. I definitely think, like, that is where the film kind of goes off the rails, where it's hard to just find the realism in this movie. Like, and to be honest with you, like, Saw movies, they're not known for their realism, right? But I found the film's conclusion with all the twists, instead of being twisty, like, hey, you need to know all of these different movies in the Saw franchise, this time it was just like, that's absolutely ridiculous that they could have planned it like that.
how do you? Well, it's basically like, how do you get them out of this trap? Like, I thought the good, cool twist would have been if everybody survives their fucking trial.
Mm-hmm.
Like at first, like when we see like the one first guy like survives, like, you know, through his trial and tribulation with the pipe bomb sewn into his arm. Would have been kind of cool to actually see everybody survive the trap, you know, and Kramer would be like, all right, get that one.
I thought too that the kind of things I was interesting was when Gabriella wins her trap, and then Cecilia just snaps her neck, and they, like, at the end of the movie,
They're having like a fucking like Amanda's like, whoa, so why? And Kramer's like,
right?
she passed her trial, and she's like, I don't fucking care.
But technically, at the end, like, they should be upset that she's dead, right? Because if this was all part of the plan, they should be upset because she won, and then their plan actually got her killed. But they're like just walking out into the yellow Mexican air,
Sunlight in their hair.
yeah.
Like,
They're just like, whoo,
here you go, little boy. Here's like $1 billion.
yeah. I think I felt like that was, again, like, that's a way that they, like, recursively they've kind of, like, gone back on what John Kramer actually means from, like, the original Saw. But I do like the fact that this movie does go back to traps that they technically can win. As we said, sometimes they are absolutely ridiculous traps. And that is partially because with a Saw movie, you now constantly have to up the ante with the traps. You can't just have some random, you know, like, if you don't do this, your arm's going to get cut off. That doesn't fly anymore. You have to have a ridiculous architect trap that John Kramer had to go to an industrial warehouse and talk to the salesman. And the salesman's like, are you sure you need this for your, like, home garage? This is a fucking, you know, industrial chicken, you know, slaughterhouse vacuum. This is not something that you're going to use in your garage. And John Kramer, I don't think you understand what I need this for.
Well, no, I think also too though you get to see kind of Amanda's touch on the traps though, because some of the, like, again, like the brutality of like what do you gotta do to survive? Well, you gotta take that saw there and cut into your skull and get some brain out.
Yeah,
like, you know, like, that's ridiculous compared to, like, you know,
not only because not only that, like one wrong move in your brain and, like, you're not gonna be able to do anything.
yeah,
You know, you're like, just to pull out a piece of your brain.
or again, like the fact that Valentina had to cut through her fucking femur, the strongest bone and the hardest thing to cut in your and to break in your body. Yeah, you got to cut through your whole fucking leg in 3 minutes, and then, as you said, take the suction and get the bone marrow. Like, the ridiculous.
Yeah.
Which I do think at first, like, I agree. Like, the fact that, like, if the traps are winnable and painful, but, like, winnable, like, and reasonable, are the first two Saw films, like, had the best traps because of that. And obviously because of plot reasons, because of Amanda and Costas Mandalore not really following what Jigsaw wants, doing the same stuff, but having these unwinnable traps. And that's good for the story because of what's going on in the story. So it's nice here to see, like, actually, as you said, like, them to go back to traps that are, they're, for the most part, believably winnable, like, could potentially do. Some of them, are, like I said, are kind of ridiculous and obtuse, but, that is nice.
I do. I think that this film does sit well within the Saw 1 and 2 because you do see the idea that, like, Amanda does harbor certain vengeances for people that she doesn't for others. So you see, like, she has a soft spot for Gabriella because she has a drug addiction, just like Amanda. So you kind of see, like...
I thought it was cool.
Well, you kind of see where Amanda's going to be coming into the series and sort of not following the exact religion of John's, Jigsaw elements. So I like that too. I think, like, as a prequel, this movie works pretty well because it does do a lot of good things to set up the movies that have come after it.
You know what the best good thing about this movie is?
What's that?
Shawnee Smith's bowl cut.
Ooh, that is a haircut for sure. Yeah, that is something. I think they were going for... They wanted it to be similar to the Saw 2 one, but wow.
It's not. It's not even close.
That's like more butchered than Valentina in this movie.
It's just hilarious, though. It's like, so...
Yeah, and they also give Shawnee Smith, kind of a lurid lighting to kind of hide the fact that, like, she's obviously going to be older than she is in Saw 2. With John, he's cancer patient dude, so you can have him looking fucking old as hell and it doesn't matter, right? Like, he, the man's almost like 90 years old. So he's like, 85. Yeah. So he can look as old as he, looks, and it doesn't really matter because he's got cancer. But, like, for Shawnee Smith, they kind of have to hide that a little bit. So you'll notice that they have, like, a lot of, not that Shawnee Smith is looking like, quote unquote, old, but just obviously looks older than she was in Saw 2. So, right. So they kind of hide that a bit. But, like, honestly, Tobin Bell, great in this movie. I think he does a really good job. I think he handles it really well. I think he does shine, especially since we don't see him very often in a lot of the other Saw movies. Like, this is really one where he's front and center. He, like, comes to the traps. Normally in Saw movies, he's on tape or you see him in the background or something. But here, he's, like, pacing around down the floor, which is kind of interesting, I thought.
Yeah, Tobin's, this is one of his finest performances. I mean, he's always been a strong point in the series, but, he does bring a gravitas and levity to it that's, really much needed.
And
Shawnee Smith, too, does really good, even though she is kind of, like, gremlin-ish and that's like just kind of weaseling about like a fucking, like, like Salacious Crumb, Jabba the Hutt's, like, henchman. Like,
I think that's part of the writing. I don't think it's Shawnee Smith. Shawnee Smith does a good job.
No, I'm not saying that's her fault, because it is. Because she's like, you think you're the first one to try to cry? Doesn't work. Like, she's finding it, but, like, she's written ghoulish, like, to be kind of innocent, idiotic, when she's not doing her whole, like, John, are you okay?
Yeah, I mean, I like the film, but it definitely has drawbacks, but it's not the actors that are the drawbacks, except for, and again, I don't think this is their fault, but we talked about how Cecilia is very, cartoony villainous. I don't think that's the actress's fault, because I think she does actually a really good job when she's actually, like, playing fake doctor. She sells that really well. I think it's the writing's fault when it gets to be the end of the movie where it's like, this is going off the rails here. So we'll
you can definitely tell the budget was limited too, because the fact that the whole second and third act are literally just shoved into the warehouse, and everybody's chained up in the same location to have their traps happen. And it's very kind of soap opera-y and set up like it.
Yeah, you would really think like they could have shot this on a pretty low budget, and it really wouldn't have, besides setting up the traps and stuff. There's really not that much that costs a lot of money here.
It's Saw 3 where they're all trapped together in the... I know in Saw 2 they're trapped, they all have to find keys, but Saw 3 is the one where they're trapped in the warehouse, right?
Yes, and he has to go through, it's like his game and he's going through and trying to save everybody. Yeah, that's Saw 3. Yeah, I mean, it's only 13 million, so yeah, it's pretty low. Yeah. What do you think about the traps? Like, how do you feel about them in this movie?
I thought they were fine. I think they're minimalistic, but it works because they put emphasis into the gore, and I was kind of toe tapping at times. So some of the gore and kind of retching, not in scaring, but disgust. Because blood and guts doesn't really bother me, but bone breaking after snapping my leg in half when I was, riding a bike in 5th grade. I've always been sensitive to the bone curdling, crunching shit. So the whole taking a thing into your skull and seeing the skull get cut open and flipped open, the brain and all that's fine, but the whole bone saw shit into that, it's
Yeah, the film, I think, I like the fact that the traps are relatively simple in comparison to some of the others. I like the fact that they do have what you would consider a winnable objective. And I like that they do have a brutality to them that's simplistic. I don't like that the film does the whole, it becomes pretty clear after the second trap that most people are not going to survive their traps. Because they want you to see, like I said, they want you to see both the grisly doing of actually doing the trap, and then actually seeing the aftermath. So I feel like that's kind of a cop-out, at least in my opinion. However, I do think they did have some interesting ideas for traps, and I think that what the film really excels at is not necessarily showing you all of the gore, because it doesn't show you that much gore, honestly. But what it does do is have great sound design. The sound design is what really gets to you, whereas the squelching of ripping through flesh,
crunching,
the crunching of bones.
It's definitely a film that you want to watch. The theater experience is where it's at because of the right proper sound.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, which I can imagine. I know, home entertainment systems are delightful and surround and all that, but you're definitely probably going to get your money's worth in this in the theater just because of that alone, how big and holistic and bombastic everything is at that presentation level.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's definitely where it excels, is just all of that sound design is what really gets you, with the torture elements and listening to people scream and throw up and stuff like that. It all kind of adds to the atmosphere of everything that happens. What do you think about the post-credit sequence? Because in our theater, I knew about the post-credits. I knew there was a post-credit sequence. But everybody fucking left in our theater.
Well, it doesn't help, because usually when there's a post-credits, they leave the lights in the house dim until you get to that, and then they bring it up. Here, they just brought it right up. So, everyone... Which, we were 2 of 8 people there. So, it was a good showing for a matinee on Monday. But no, it was great, because it's oh yeah, that one guy that was oh, I got my pancreas stage 4 taken out. And then you find out, he's he tracks him down, and then BAM! Costas Mandalore's there. Mark Hoffman, let's go.
I mean, the film does hint at it, because, during the movie, Jigsaw calls. He says, I've got a detective that can help me find these people, and he calls him. And you hear his voice on the line, basically, tracking people down. But you don't actually get to see him until the post-credit sequence. So
And man, his hair is nice and oily and black, and like super slick back. Out of all the people you gotta fuck, John Kramer.
I mean, it's a nice call to the rest of the Saw series. Doesn't really mean that much, but and again,
unless they want to put him into the next ones.
yeah, and I mean, again, you have to think about the logistics of John Kramer's calendar. Just gotta be horrendous. He needs a damn receptionist to like handle the whole thing.
That's why he's got Amanda there. She's not actually like
she's the muscle and also handling the calendar.
Oh, I think I'd like to go out for dinner tonight. No, you can't. You have a trap planned.
Yeah, basically, that's why it was funny when he then when they like play the scam on him, and she's like, "Well, you know what? I can get you in next Thursday. This is the only time we have available." And he's like, "I think I could make that." It's like, "Yeah, you better check the calendar, man."
It is great though. Like it is great though. Just like he says, that Protestant work ethic, just knows the grindstone, and hell, he even made a Billy. He brought Billy down.
That's true.
How'd you like Billy's appearance in this with his like first person shot? Like,
I think
the slow bike riding.
I think it was kind of funny because, like, when you see it's a very slow bike ride. It's like so unnecessary too. When you think about it, like the logistics, like he's only been in Mexico City for a little while, yet he's fucking engineered this entire warehouse, and not only that, he's engineered Billy to come riding out for no real reason. He just kind of like rides out with a tape recorder.
Well, because it's part of the gimmick.
I know, but
which is funny too, because in 2003, 2004, you mean to tell me this bitch knows about the Jigsaw Killer and like all his tropes and stuff? Because she's like, who would have thought that I would have stumbled upon John Kramer, the Jigsaw Killer?
Yeah, that's the other thing, is that the film, like if it does truly take place between Saw 1 and 2,
she shouldn't fucking have a clue who.
Technically, he doesn't. Like, obviously, the FBI has no clue. John Kramer's out there buying all kinds of industrial shit, like, industrial vacuums, industrial saws, things that most laymen or even architects wouldn't have their hands on. He's out there, searching through the gigantic, industrial warehouse catalog, buying all this stuff. FBI's like, we have no idea who Jigsaw could be. Not tracking down any of, like, the receipts, like, people calling in, like, I got a tip for you. Like, some guy bought a fucking vacuum, and I think it definitely could suck a guy's eyes out, It's like, FBI's just, I don't know. We didn't follow up on any of those clues.
Again, if you think about it, like you said, logistically, like, if it happened after Saw 2 and between 2 and 3, it'd make more sense, because Saw 2, he does get captured.
And those were big, those were bigger games. And not only that, but he obviously abducted a kid from a detective.
Yeah.
Those are big things. So, yeah, Jigsaw's going to be on the map at that point as a federal investigation. But, like, between Saw 1 and Saw 2, I don't know that he would have actually had I mean, I guess in Saw 1, he does have the local police force looking into him, right? But I don't know that he would be national news at that point, or actually I should say international news, because technically, she's traveling all over the world. She's in Norway, Mexico. It's hard to believe that she would like immediately know who he is. I agree.
Don't you love the fact too when Kramer's down there and he's getting whisked away to Casa de Salamanca, that like the van stops. I'm like, where are you? Who are you?
Cartel.
Right this way, John Kramer. Enjoy your stay.
I honestly thought that this movie was just about Jigsaw infiltrating the cartel. Just like,
it's Better Call Saul. He's down there to visit fucking Lalo.
He also made a nice joke too about Jigsaw taking out his vengeance on the barista who over overfired his beans, his coffee beans, because he gets a nice French press in Mexico. And it's like, it is funny to think about, like, at a certain point, how Jigsaw might find anybody
to be like
worthy, to be worthy of traps, because like they didn't,
you didn't yield the proper length of time when you were at that yield sign.
Exactly.
Your heart is chilled, bastard.
It's like the beans were overfired, and now you will be due.
And this is all of a sudden you see dun 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 dun.
All right, so let's rate Saw.
Well, real quick. So,
sure.
Traps, though. We talked about briefly. What's your favorite trap?
It's a good question. It's definitely not the brain one, because I feel like that one truly is unwinnable. Like, realism wise, I don't think that would even work. You're doing literal brain surgery in pulling out your own brain. I don't think that would work. So I'm gonna go with, I think like I think the one that I thought was cool was the one where he had the bombs planted into his arms. I thought that was an interesting trap, where it definitely was one of those Saw 1 to 2 traps that are actually winnable, and he does win. So I like that quite a bit, because I thought that was, it was nice to see, especially like considering the one that Amanda survives, where it's the reverse bear trap, but she can actually do it, and it's not like she's doing something that's going to leave her in shock after she like cuts her fucking leg off or something like that.
Totally in shambles. No, I agree. The pipe bomb trap's the best one, just because like it's like yeah, you're going to be scarred on your arms. You have a chance, so you can be able to get these pipe bombs off your arms. It's not going to leave you crippled and dejected for life. It's,
Yeah, because you have to kind of think about that too from the perspective of like Valentina. Okay, so after you made her cut off her leg, you think she's going to be more happy with her life? Like she's going to now have a positive outlook after she's now basically crippled for the rest of her life? Like, it doesn't really make sense that he goes those extremes of like, some people have to like literally lose limbs or bodily function for them to be able to like continue on in their life.
The only thing I can think of is you can attribute to Amanda's doing, but at the same time, he's still technically,
I mean, he's the brains. He's the one designing it.
Yeah. So I mean, no, you're right. Like it doesn't jive, and I think that's probably like, I would like to see if we were going to further explore this, like in like the trials and tribulations of John Kramer as Jigsaw. I would like to see these like gut-wrenching traps, but they're winnable and aren't going to totally maim you for life if you win them, because if you don't, obviously death's the price you pay. But I think the fact that if you make them, realistically winnable and not cripple you beyond a point where you're like, well, I wouldn't kill them. Like, like you said, like Valentina, like, oh, my leg's cut off, I guess I won't go throw myself off a cliff now.
Yeah. Well, if you think even to like Saw 2, like some of the traps were like, I'm going to be experiencing like some pain right now. Like I have hands in glass right now. But like your hands in glass, like, okay, yeah, you're going to have pain right now, but you can survive it. You're not going to be maimed by it. And you literally can power through and do whatever you need to do. It's not like you're like I'm saying, like, if you cut off your leg, you're going to be in fucking shock. Like, there's no realism in that. Like, if it would be kind of interesting if Tobin Bell or John Kramer was like watching the games happen and like, oh shit, went a little too far on that one. Like, like I realize now that was never going to work. Like if they started to go into shock or something, and he was like, yeah, no, that put a note down, can't do that next time. Because like just thinking logistically about some of them, it's just impossible to win some of them, based on the human body. But like, I agree. I think either go the route of going back to ones that are winnable, where you're not going to be ridiculously maimed after, or focus on John Kramer's brain tumor and how it has corrupted his sense of winning, or like what he considers a winnable game. Because I think that's another route that they could go if they do want to pursue prequels and kind of make it understandable why his games have become like more sadistic as they go along, is to focus on the brain tumor literally changing his personality. Because that's like a route that I think would be realistic to take. All right, so let's rate Saw 10. On a scale of 0 to 10, unfortunately, wasted local tequila. What would you give Saw 10?
I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10. It's good. Like I said, like the first half of this film is really good. It's different, it's new, it gives you something to kind of grab onto. It leaves you kind of wondering what direction the movie's going to go into, but the second half of the film dives into chaos and then eventually into anarchy, and it's misled and misthought of. The traps are fun. For the most part, they're, enjoyable. They're visceral, but not too over. They're not overly complicated. Tobin Bell does a great job, and so does Johnny Smith, in their respective roles. I think just the fact that the writing kind of goes off the rails in the second half is the biggest detriment to this film, because there is some good torture porn scenes in this film, and it has a good aesthetic. The film does look really good. Sounds, as you said, the sound on this is really good as well. I think the fact that it's a prequel is fine, and it's stands alone on its own. But I think the fact that it dives into like this Bugs Bunny cartoon bullshit in the last half is the biggest fault in this film. The writing just is not up to par. The directing's there, the acting is there, the sound design's there, the traps are there. It's just the writing to carry the story is not that good after the second half, and it's very pedantic and shallow, and kind of sad, because this is obviously the best. This is one of the better Saw films, probably the second best after the first one. But the fact that it fails to miss the mark in the second half is its biggest flaw. So I'd probably say 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I would agree with that. 7 out of 10. I think that this probably is one of the best Saw sequels. And I think that's saying something. It definitely does a good job of presenting a movie that sits right in line with Saw 1 and Saw 2 for the most part. It captures the feel of it, captures the atmosphere. It has web search as a Google search there to indicate, yep, we're in 2003. Yet, I think the biggest missteps is when it tries to do a much more formulaic approach in the second half, where it's like game, interlude, where you have these expectations that the player is not going to win. It does not use its Mexican locale to its advantage for the most part, because this is basically Anywhere USA warehouse. So you see like the lower budget at play there. I think that in terms of storyline, the movie is good. It does focus on some elements of the medical profession that I think are interesting, that kind of harken back to the first movie. First movie is definitely about the healthcare industry. This movie is to a certain extent about the healthcare industry, how we don't, we have the FDA that only approves things based on getting paid for it. Insurance issues, having to seek out care in other countries. I think that's kind of like a minor element to this movie, though. And I don't like the cartoonish villain, as we've talked about. I think it's kind of ridiculous towards the end of the movie. I think it kind of goes off the rails. I agree. The whole end trap is absolutely crazy ridiculous, especially considering the fact that there's just no way they could have predicted what happens. And the film kind of takes that in stride and it's like, no, they did. They predicted it. But as a viewer, you're like, that's just over the top. So I think the film is good. I think it does a good job. It's one of the better Saw movies. It has brutal traps. They're definitely brutal, definitely gory. If the Academy was giving out awards for horror movies, then this one should probably be nominated for sound design, because I do think it does a really good job at presenting like a discomforting sound design. But there's definitely some detrimental elements to the story. Things that don't really jive with the rest of the series, things that don't jive with John Kramer as a character. So I think it's a little bit above middling. So that's why I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. Still one of the best in the franchise. Still way, way better than Jigsaw and a step up from Spiral. All right. So that's Saw 10. Next week, doing nostalgia, Hocus Pocus.
Sure.
I think that probably makes sense since we've done 2 horror in a row now. I think nostalgia would be good. And it's now definitely spooky season, so Hocus Pocus I think would be a fine one to do.
Are you excited that Hocus Pocus 3 got approved?
No.
Got greenlit?
No. Let Bette Midler die in peace.
From a distance, I'm collecting these paychecks.
I know. Just from a distance. Just stop. The woman wants to go to her grave. Just let her do it. Stop forcing her into this bullshit. Disney. I know they probably pay well, but no, Hocus Pocus 2 was awful.
Well, you know, by doing the first one, we're going to have to.
I know. That's probably the only other time that I'll ever revisit that movie, because I definitely found it to be a total bore.
You know, somebody at work I was talking to about Hocus Pocus, and they're like, I haven't seen it before. I go, well, if you didn't see it when it came out, it's probably not going to matter.
Yeah, it's too late for you.
It's too many millennials. Like, it's the same thing with Nightmare Before Christmas.
If you didn't see it when you were 3 years old, then you could just fuck off.
Yeah, then it didn't capture your imagination. When I was 3 years old, I didn't like it either, so, yeah.
Yeah, I think Hocus Pocus will be a fun one to do. I watch it every year, mostly because my wife is the big Hocus Pocus. I like Hocus Pocus. I think it's a fun movie. My wife loves Hocus Pocus. Like, she'll actually say things that I don't even realize are in the movie. And so I honestly, like, it takes me by surprise sometimes. It's almost like when I like talk about Home Alone, basically, like the same thing. So I think we'll have a fun episode of that. So if you want to hear us cover Hocus Pocus and pretty much all the rest of our Halloween movies for Halloweenies 2, you should subscribe to us on pretty much any podcast app that you can think of. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbay, whatever you use, we're on. Subscribe, leave us a nice review. We're on Facebook and Twitter. Search for us on there, Blood and Black Rum Podcast. We have an email address at bloodandblackrumpodcast@gmail.com. You can write to us, let us know what you like, what you don't like, what movies you want us to cover, and we'll take that into consideration. Even if it's the George Lopez show.
Oh, roll.
I don't know where that came from. I just, for whatever reason, thought about George Lopez. And you can donate to us on Patreon or our Spotify page. Anything you donate will be put back towards beer, so we appreciate that, fueling our alcoholism. Other than that, hope you enjoyed our Halloweenies episode on Saw 10. Hope you go out and see it in theaters. It's a Halloween tradition. So, hope you've gone and check it out. And until next week, take care.